Hello, I'm here to lecture for the group of you today. As you may have noticed, the interpreter is turned off. This is so you can just focus on what it looks like for sign. You all came here to sit and watch the interpretation, watch me sign. So go ahead, interpreter, you may begin. And as I said, probably none of you, or most of you, are probably sitting there thinking, oh, okay, what is she saying? And you must understand that the interpreter is not here for me, it's here for you, so that while I sign you can understand. The interpreter I will use to answer your questions, so that you and I can have full communication. I wanted to address that misconception for a moment and just explain that an interpreter is used for both of us, not just for the deaf community. So I'm going to throw out a list of questions, and I'll ask you, if you think you may know, to answer. Go ahead and raise up your hand and let me know what you think the correct answer may be. I just want to emphasize that it is not about giving me the right answer. Go ahead, throw out a bunch of wrong answers. That's how you learn. In this 1 hour, you're going to retain a lot of information, and that is my main goal. We're going to touch on a lot of different things, so I hope that you leave here with a bunch of different information. And if you have any questions, or you want to wait for your question to be answered, go ahead and raise your hand, and I would be happy to continue. My goal for you today is to leave with all of your questions answered. I don't want you to be scared. Oh, maybe I shouldn't ask this to a deaf person. You know, it's like books. You have a bunch of different questions, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. Go ahead and ask. I just thought that those two things were important to address and emphasize. Now I'm going to throw out a bunch of different questions, and you can choose between the list of options which you think is the best answer. Which do you think best describes someone that cannot hear? Deaf, hard of hearing, physically handicapped, hearing impaired, or I just don't know. How many of you think that the first option was correct? Deaf. I see about 5 to 10 hands. And how many of you think hard of hearing? Okay, I can't count you if you don't have your hand up. None. None for hearing and hard of hearing. And how many for hearing impaired? Okay, around 3. How many agree with physically handicapped? None. Okay, and how many of you just don't know? All right. The correct answer was option 1, deaf. It's clear, it's part of the deaf culture, the language, it's part of our community. We prefer deaf. And don't worry about how it sounds. Maybe, you should butter it up. No, that's who we are. Did you know that about half of America, around 60%, is either deaf, hard of hearing, or deaf later in life? Precisely 32,000 people have hearing loss. 40,000 are deaf. On to our next question. How many of you believe that there is one sign language system for the entire world? Raise your hands if you believe that's false. Raise your hands if you believe that's true. Okay. And raise your hand if you believe it's false. Wow, all of you believe it's false. Okay. That's right. Europe has its own sign system. Here in America, we use ASL, or American Sign Language, and it includes a bunch of grammar, facial cues. You use your eyebrows, look at body language. It takes everything into account to create sentences. You may have a misconception that this is an easy way to translate, but actually there is such a thing called consecutive interpreting, where people have to hold on to the information. They go sentence by sentence by sentence, and then finally at the end you're allowed to interpret your interpretation. It can be really cool, but also very difficult.